A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, it is a period of exploring the stars through the frequencies of love and the wrinkles of the universe. The call goes out for warriors to stand against the darkness, and it will be answered by a young girl struggling with the loss of her father, the pressure of a cruel world around her, and questions about what it means to be herself. If your dream only includes you, it's too small. Duvernay, American.
Hello there, and welcome back to 6 Degrees of Star Wars, the podcast where we explore all the ways that George Lucas's flagship franchise surrounds us, binds us, and penetrates us in the landscape of cinema. I'm your host, Sam Marchioni. Joining me today for the very first time is Beth.
Hi.
Bestie. And my little Dianogas, Shamila Karanakran.
Hello.
And Jasmine Garcia.
My fellow citizens of Earth, it's no secret that society is crumbling, to the point where it would not be surprising at all if we found out that we are slowly but surely falling under the influence of the It, in spite of the best efforts of many people, including, I'd say, everyone on this here podcast. And one of the lesser, but not insignificant signs of that is we let this movie flop.
It's
and
a
I'm only
travesty.
kind of exaggerating.
Yes, we are discussing the 2018 A Wrinkle in Time, directed by Ava DuVernay. This is Degree 4. It features an actor from one Star Wars project, and actually an actor from last week's episode, David Oyelowo, who provides the voice of the It. This man is a great voice actor, and God forbid they ever reboot Star Wars, but he would be a great Darth Vader substitute.
Ooh.
If you can't have James Earl Jones, I mean. I would rather have David Oyelowo than have the AI re-speecher James Earl Jones.
God, yeah.
And I think James Earl Jones probably would too, but then again, let James Earl Jones rest. He's tired. He's earned whatever he wants.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Greetings. I am IER60, Star Wars Retelling Connections.
Uncredited amendment now. John Knoll was the ILM executive staff in A Wrinkle in Time and had uncredited roles as flag bearer / Lieutenant Rhea Kirsch Bravo 4 in The Phantom Menace and fighter ship pilot in Revenge of the Sith. In addition, J.J. Abrams has a thank you credit in A Wrinkle in Time and was the voice of D.O. in The Rise of Skywalker.
So, to start us off on this Wrinkle in Time thing, because this is considered a classic of American children's literature. It even shows up in Ted Lasso.
I mean, what even is A Wrinkle in Time?
It's a lovely novel. It's the story of a young girl's struggle with the burden of leadership as she journeys through space.
Yeah, that's it.
Am I supposed to be the little girl?
I like you to be.
But,
Yeah.
I actually had not read it until this weekend. This was not a book that was read to me by my family. This was not a book I read in elementary school. Although, ironically, the copy that I read was given to my mother in the 70s. So, my mother has read it. My mother loves it. And she stared at me in shock when I told her, no, I've never read it, but I've seen the movie. And she's like, there was a movie, and that's why we're here.
See, that's the opposite of my experience, where I read it, I guess it was in high school many years ago, and I read it probably like 10, 15 times over the years. And when the movie came out, my mom, who hadn't read it, I dragged her to the movie. And I was like, Mama Bear, you gotta see this. She loved it.
Oh, good. I had a feeling she would. For listeners who don't know, Beth is actually the friend on this podcast that I've known the longest, ever since I was a freshman in high school. And speaking of which, I'm somewhere in the middle of you two. I read this like in middle school, I think, and I remembered really, really enjoying it. And then I didn't really touch it until then. And I have a theory of why I never really revisited it until just this week. It's got to do with being distracted by a certain wizard boy. But we won't get too deep into that.
Damn the wizard boy.
Yep. As for me, my relationship with this book was complicated, to say the least. So we had this book in my library in grade school, but as a brand neurodivergent kid who all the adults around her just assumed that I was interested in science and kept pushing me to become a doctor, I sort of started shying away from all elements of science and sci-fi in general. So this book was put on the back burner for me, and I didn't even revisit the thought of reading it until when I started university. And it was very slow for me to get into, but it is a very neurodivergent coded book.
Yeah, I was saying that in the chat last night. This is just about every heroic character is neurodivergent coded in some way.
I would argue it doesn't even go to coding at this point. This is just text.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But the book was written in the 60s, so they didn't necessarily know that this is autism or ADHD speaking.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Especially Charles Wallace.
Oh, yeah.
Charles Wallace. I think Charles Wallace is the most complicated feelings I have in the movie. Because, Jazz, you were talking about this in the Discord, that it's very clear the book was written in the 60s because all the kids kind of talk weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it feels like in the movie, Charles Wallace is the one character who's still talking like he's in the 60s, but everybody else is talking like they're in the 2010s.
See, for me, they still very much toned down just how very 60s the language was. He still sounds like a little kid who could exist. He's just a bit of an oddball, which is the whole point of his character, of course. He's supposed to be beyond his years.
It does feel very in character for him to be a bit not quite archaic, but
verbose,
really formal, maybe.
Mhm.
And also, there's just moments where you see him be. I love the collision between. He's definitely acting like an actual 5-year-old, but also he's a very smart 5-year-old. I kind of love how those two traits interact, especially with this young actor. I really hope he ends up having a good career because he had a very good start here. This was a very good performance, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Derek McCabe is precious here.
Yeah. Oh my God, he'd be in middle school now, wouldn't he? Oh
He
God.
would.
I'm looking at Derek McCabe's IMDb page now, and he's kind of got this gender fluid energy going on in his headshot.
Oh my God! Oh, we
He's
gotta
had
see
a
this.
couple of things since then, but not a lot. His most recent credit is The Naughty Nine, which I've never heard of.
Oh, it was this Christmas movie Disney Plus released last year.
Well, at least Disney remembered, hey, we have this really good child actor on the payroll. But honestly, I think the best stuff Derek McCabe does as Charles Wallace is the evil stuff, because he's nailing that creepy child energy so well.
Very much Damien energy, for sure. And again, it would have been such a hard balance to hit, because I believe him when he's sweet and innocent, but I do believe the evil stuff, although we'll get into how I feel they handled it. But yeah.
It's always a balancing act between having a good director and a bad screenwriter, or a bad director and a good screenwriter. Did I say the same thing twice? The point is, we're looking at Ava DuVernay as director, and she's a phenomenal director. A Wrinkle in Time is kind of an outlier in terms of her other stuff, which is generally more serious, like Selma, When They See Us, 13th. I saw Origin a week or two ago, and oh my God, it emotionally devastated me. But she is really good at getting really good performances out of her actors and getting really intimate emotional performances. And then the screenplay was by Jennifer Lee, who we've kind of talked about on IER. We talked about her position as the queen of adorkability. And Jeff Stockwell, whom I don't really know anything about, but I mean, they're also working with Madeleine L'Engle's text, so...
Once again, I am speaking for the bookworms here. Let me be clear, I did really love this movie. But if there's one thing that I feel like they kind of skirted over, is the very blatant anti-fascism, anti-totalitarianism that is in this story. which it's not the first time Disney did this sort of thing. Hi, Captain America, even though I love you. But yeah, that's like the one major fault here, because when it portrays it, how it's this darkness that is engulfing worlds, it goes more into just interpersonal relationships, or like how people feel about themselves, which was always part of it. But even when we get to Kamisas, you get that one perfectly adapted moment with all the kids bouncing the balls in unison that was appropriately creepy, exactly how I pictured it in the book.
Tim Burton could never.
Never.
Mm-hmm.
But then it just kind of skips over where we kind of learn just where this is all coming from, how basically it has made it that everyone is the same or must behave in the same way, or they will be considered an aberration and either re-educated or killed.
Though there was one line that Red had. He said everything's taken care of in total without options or alternatives in the scene where he was at the beach, and that really creeped me out in 7 different ways.
And Calvin did later bring up the aberration thing, and he made it into a positive. I'm sorry, Calvin, I'm obsessed with how much of a soft boy Calvin is and how much hard eyes he has for Meg.
Listen,
so much hard eyes.
Calvin is the reason. The way Calvin looks at Meg touched my inner 12-year-old heart, really, because if this had come to me when I was 12 years old, it would have meant the world to me.
It did mean a lot to me when I was in high school, but I gotta say, it hits so much harder now that I'm a mumble in my 30s.
And his actor's great too. Levi Miller is doing pretty well for himself. He's in the Craven the Hunter movie. Take that as you will, but
I mean, I'm kind of looking forward to that one. I recognize that it's clearly not a very good adaptation of it, but I'm not here for the adaptation. I'm here for the fact that Aaron Johnson and Ariana DeBose look hot.
I mean, aren't
the point is he is navigating the child actor to grown actor adult pipeline pretty well. And so is our leading lady, even though she's not technically top billed, Storm Reed, who is now an Emmy winner. Good for her.
I'm so happy for her. She nailed it. She absolutely nailed it. Because
it really did.
Meg Murray is such an important character in her genre. I would even argue in literature in general, I feel like, because it's even now, but especially in the 60s, the idea of this girl who is just angry and not at all prim and proper or sweet being the hero, and in fact her anger is what makes her the hero. I just think that's neat.
I saw the movie before I read the book, so I absolutely love the thread of I give you the gift of your faults and how that comes back. That is one of the best things I have ever seen.
You do know the faults are the bad qualities, right? Are they really? Love that scene so much.
Indeed.
Reese Witherspoon just so did not care in the perfect way.
Reese Witherspoon was giving such Giselle energy, and I was absolutely here for it. Like, if Giselle was just a little bitchier.
No, it was not Giselle energy. It was Elle Woods energy.
Oh, yes.
Like, Reese Witherspoon's a fantastic actress, but she knows how to bring back the Elle energy when it's needed.
What, like it's hard? And when Oprah tells you to do something, you do it. So in that respect, she is perfect as Mrs. Witch. But I kind of wish... It was really interesting to see how Mrs. Witch talked transcribed in the book. And I kind of wish they'd done something with that. Like, even just given her, like, an echo filter or something, or slowed down her speech.
Yeah.
I will say, I listened to the audiobook. It's not that different from how it's portrayed in the audiobook, so I guess it didn't bother me that much.
How do we feel about Mindy Kaling?
Very complicated feelings.
I loved her, mostly because I love Mrs. Who the most. The cheating and using other people's words is very much something that I do as well. In my mind, I am a DJ, not a songwriter. So I just Sample a little bit from other people's genius.
I love Mrs. Who's whole gimmick. I don't know. Mindy Kaling kind of feels a bit at odds with the majesty of Oprah and the flightiness of Reese Witherspoon. And maybe that's the IRL stuff I know about Mindy Kaling filtering
Yes.
in.
Valid.
Yes, because so much of her anti-blackness, it can play into like how she's portraying Mrs. Who, and she does have those like kind of moments where she's quoting like black people and sort of imitating them, and I was like, no, do not go in this direction.
The Chris Tucker thing was definitely interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, when I originally saw this, I did not know all of that about her, but even then, the one that stuck with me was not the Chris Tucker one. I think y'all know I'm a theater kid. You know which one it was.
Yeah.
Hamilton.
Yeah, it's like we knew. I think we knew at the time they were planning on doing something with the pro shot. They just hadn't decided yet because this was pre-pandemic. Oh God, pre-pandemic years we hardly knew ye.
Although it
But-
was kind of funny because anytime there was a scene with only like a couple people, I'm like, this really feels like a COVID shot.
You know, I can see it. God, the less we talk about that, the better. On the one hand, yes, a part of me cringed at it, but the other part of me that does still have affection for Miranda's work. Because, I'm sorry, I've been a fan since I was 15 years old. It's just, that's never going to quite go away.
There are a lot of lines in Hamilton that are great when you take them out of context. Like, there's an entire movement on Tumblr, it might be on Twitter too, the Force for Ham thing.
Yep.
That's putting Hamilton lyrics to Star Wars stuff. I lived in that tag. I loved that tag. At one point I saw like a whole ass burn that was written for Leia to Vader.
I once wrote a congratulations parody that was Obi-Wan to Vader.
Ooh.
Oh, good. It's just so easy to dunk on Vader. But getting back, this is also a kind of a Star Wars story in that darkness is threatening the galaxy and the love of family is the only thing that can save us.
Yeah, this fits right in.
Speaking of it's actually a composite character because it's taking elements of it, where it was just in charge of Cosmotos.
Camazotz.
I always mispronounce that.
It's a hard name.
And then it takes the inspiration from the black thing in the book, which is essentially the embodiment of all darkness and evil.
They were all kind of connected in the book anyway, so it kind of makes sense that they would just, fuck it, it's all one being.
I'm going to guess that they were also probably trying to minimize, like, the possible anti-blackness connotations of having the black thing be an enemy.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. And also they very much toned down the Jesus-y elements of the original book, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, like, we did not need Meg or... I don't even remember who it was, but somebody, like, broke out into a whole-ass Bible song while they were flying on Mrs. Whatsit, and I'm like...
I think it was Mrs. Whatsit.
Well, it doesn't really matter who was doing it. It's like, let's just enjoy the flying. Let's envision the Disney ride this is clearly never going to be, soaring over Uriel.
Oh, God. Uriel was so beautiful. It was every bit as beautiful as I wanted it to be, and I thought they were actually going to go with her being a flying Pegasus like it's described in the book, but I honestly love this design of her even better.
It kind of reminded me of Fantasia.
Yeah, like Goddess of the Spring.
Yeah, the closing act of Fantasia 2000.
Yeah. And when we first saw Uriel, all my black and brown friends in STEM, they were like yelling, "Color in my sci-fi!"
In this economy?
Yeah, this movie was actually tied to a big push to get children of color into STEM and sci-fi, and I think that kind of got put under the wayside because, like we said, this was a 2018 film. It came out in March 2018. Does anyone remember what was still going strong in theaters in March 2018?
That's before times. I don't remember anything before COVID.
It was Black Panther.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a double-edged sword because Ava and Ryan Coogler, they are good friends in real life, but it also pitted them against each other, which
It wasn't necessarily that it was pitting them against each other, it's that both of these were Disney projects, and when Disney saw what a big hit Black Panther was, they put all their energy into maintaining the momentum on Black Panther. And so as a result,
they didn't market
Wrinkle in
this for
Time
shit.
kind of fell by the wayside. And unfortunately, it feels a lot like Ava DuVernay became a test run for Nia DaCosta getting the shifted blame in the Marvels 5 years later.
And this is it particularly egregious because Ava DuVernay became the first Black woman to helm
a major blockbuster with a budget of over $100 million.
Exactly.
She was originally in talks to direct Black Panther, and then she left because she wasn't going to get enough creative control. And so I guess they kind of gave her Wrinkle in Time as like a consolation prize? Question mark?
But speaking of consolation prize, like before she even started filming this, she lost her father.
Yeah,
before this, and so like the direction that she went to with Meg and her relationship with her own lost dad, that was that affected it so much.
That's one of two moments when I absolutely tear up.
Chris Pine and Gugu Mbatha-Raw were just, for how little time they actually had together on screen, just gangbusters chemistry.
Since Princess Diaries 2, Chris Pine has had an uncanny ability to look at any woman like she is the sun, the moon, and the stars in the sky, and just absolutely make you believe he adores her.
Yeah. And it's Gugu Mbatha-Raw. Like, you absolutely
it's not a hard job.
Yeah.
I mean, also true, but also, see Wonder Woman 1984? That is how you have Chris Pine reunite with his beloved.
Oh God! Don't refine.
No, but
that's such a great
I had so much beef with Chris Pine's look in here. Like stylistically, it makes sense for him to have the floppy hair and the overlong beard. Like after 4 years where he's been stranded. But when he's at the science conference making eyes at his wife, when she was saying two particles in love, shall we say? You're literally married to one of the most gorgeous women on the planet. Step it up.
And you have to assume that Kate likes it that way. Because
he's such a
if she didn't, she would tell Alex and he would cut it.
Yeah, and I kind of liked the scruffy thing, because he has more important things to worry about, you know? And also, I like guys with a little bit of a long hair. Listen, I'm just saying I would not be mad if they liked my vibe.
But I still would fully watch a prequel of like their college days, because we do have Meg saying that Kate was Alex's tutor when they were in university.
And also Charles Wallace said that even their mom was awkward at one point, and now she's beautiful. That was so cute. As embarrassing as it would be, it was also very cute.
Yes, that...
Again, very 5-year-old behavior.
How do you feel about the inclusion of Veronica? Because in the book, we did not have Veronica. We did have the twins who were like, geez, Meg, why can't you be normal? And I don't miss those twins.
Well, Ava did say that if there was a sequel, then the twins would probably appear like as recently adopted kids.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, Veronica was interesting. Like I see what they were going for with her. Like you did kind of have to show how Meg was struggling, because this is a visual medium, of course. And I've seen worse attempts at writing a bully character, and she's not on long enough that even if she was poorly written, it would be a problem. And you know, Rowan Blanchard, from what little I've seen of her, I like her.
I did cheer when Meg threw the basketball at her. Because I would do the same in her situation. Moment. I have done the same.
Oh.
I think we've all had a Veronica in our lives.
I once kicked a guy and made him bleed.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
He had it coming.
So did the guy that I slapped and pushed out of the bus seat. Beth, I think you know the story.
So did the guy I chased up into a tree.
Am I the
Okay,
only
Beth.
one who doesn't have a story?
Maybe?
Okay, Beth has officially earned our Cinnamon Roll Too Good for This World Too Pure award for the episode.
Yay!
Beth, I don't think either of us expected this. If you knew our dynamic better, you'd understand. But
I ask about Veronica because it's one of those things, like, we're always on the internet seeing the discourse about irredeemable villains and tragic backstories and whatnot. So seeing that Veronica deals with some kind of body dysmorphia and disordered eating, I should say, and that seems to be the turning point of Meg, like, not being afraid of her or resenting her anymore. I don't know how to feel about it,
I think
because
she's
on
a
the one
child.
hand, yes, it's always good to show people compassion because you don't know what's going on in their lives, but on the other hand, it felt like an easy out to have Veronica give the wave back at the end. Like, yeah, we're good now.
I mean, I don't know if it necessarily says that we're good now. I think it's just more...
It's more like, okay, I'll just leave you alone now, and we'll just go our separate ways. That's what it read to me.
I think that's Meg trying to extend an olive branch, and you can see the look on Veronica's face. She's really surprised. I think that wave back was just out of surprise, really. It's just like...
Yeah, I think she looked pretty confused. Like, what is going on right now?
And it's not like she has an audience to show off for, so it's just like, I mean, okay.
I mean, unless you count Calvin.
Well, yes, but
yeah,
clearly Calvin would not be impressed by that, and I think she knows that.
Yep. I was a little disappointed that we didn't get more of Fortinbras.
Yes.
Fortinbras, good doggo.
Good doggy.
There are so many Shakespeare references in the text, though. It's ridiculous. Not in the movie, the book, I mean.
In the movie, too.
Yeah, but just not as strong. It's not as obvious, I feel like, is what I mean.
Another thing I really like about the movie is that it has a lot of soft masculinity. Yes. Like, I think that's another reason that the critics didn't like it, is because between two wife guys / future wife guys in Alex and Calvin...
Yeah, because Calvin
precocious
and Meg do
adorability of Charles Wallace and the happy medium, I think, like, all of the quote-unquote good male characters are very soft masculine. Like, they're not manly men who do man stuff.
Yeah.
That falls on Calvin's dad, and he's the worst.
Yeah, that was oof. That was also a new addition, and yeah, that's a solid addition. It definitely makes sense why Calvin wanted to get away from that. But speaking of the critics, should we address the Captain Marvel in the room?
We should.
It was such a minor thing. Brie Larson was doing a minimum amount of allyship by saying
that if you make a movie that is a love letter to women of color, there is an insanely low chance a woman of color will have the chance to see your movie and review your movie. And this is also not to mention other people besides white dudes like Star Wars and would love the opportunity to do a set visit. And I'm also saying I don't hate white dudes. I'm just saying we need to be conscious of our bias and do our part to make sure that everyone is in the room. Our industry has gone through a major growth. We are expanding to make films that better reflect the people that buy movie tickets, but they are not allowed enough chances to read public discourse on these films by the people that these films were made for. I do not need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work for him about A Wrinkle in Time. It wasn't made for him. I want to know what that film meant to women of color, to biracial women, to teen women of color, to teens that are biracial. And for the third time, I don't hate white dudes. These are just facts. These are not my feelings. And I'm really sorry, Lindsay. Please don't kill me.
And every freaking entitled little man baby decided that that made her the ultimate Jezebel.
And they're still riding that on, again, the eternal culture wars to this day, all the way to, I would definitely argue, that is at least part of why the Marvels unfortunately suffered.
The Marvels had so much working against it for so many reasons, and I can't wait to get into all of those on that episode. But the fact that Brie was spotlighting A Wrinkle in Time, I think, was really important, because I think she clearly read the room and she was like, no, this film is freaking awesome, and I'm going to use it as my main talking point because I need people to engage with it and realize it's not made for you, and that's okay. Because something I think she could have pointed out in her speech is that you don't have to have something made for you to appreciate it. Like, I mean,
Not
I can't
everything
speak
is
to this
for
as
you.
much as maybe Shammy can, but Shammy, you grew up with a lot of media where the people in the stories did not look like you, correct?
Exactly. Especially the only brown kid in the school. You're surrounded by all of these white classics and white books. You don't see someone like me on the cover. It wasn't until like maybe Steven Universe where we had Connie that I did actually see myself for the first time. And that was in like the 2010s.
Yeah, it's like we're actually getting so much better representation, and the only downside is that a lot of the people who really needed it when they were younger didn't get it. But I think that's part of why you're seeing all these millennials absolutely gravitating towards children's media a lot more.
I was still kind of baby feminist at the time when I first saw this movie, but that moment when the quote-unquote perfect Meg shows up within the It, and she's wearing the fashionable clothes and she has the straightened hair, and it's like, okay, yeah, so the perfect Meg is the one who assimilates into racism. Got it.
Yeah, no, like the line about her hair absolutely hits even harder with her being a little black girl.
Yeah, especially with her wearing her natural hair.
Yeah.
And it does look beautiful. Like, I love every moment when Ava shoots it lit from behind.
Yes.
And it's like a beautiful little halo. And it does kind of have some red in it, so that there is still that little bit of Book Meg carried over.
True. Well,
because Book Meg was a redhead, right?
No, her mom is. She has brown hair. That's like one of the things she hates about herself.
Okay,
that she has,
I
like,
felt
this
like
mousy brown
when
hair.
I was reading the description of Meg's hair, there was some red in it, but like
Maybe.
Yeah,
it's just like I do have so much love for this movie. It's so whimsical. There's so much love in it that I can almost forgive the fact that I feel like the Camazot scene, even though again, like they started off really strong with the bouncing ball scene. I do feel like they rushed kind of the ending a little bit, which is a shame. And I will say, Michael Pena's take on the Man with Red Eyes was really interesting, very, very different from the book, which is not a bad thing. Like,
well, he does have experience with cults.
Oh,
Michael Pena is the best part of every movie he's in. Let's be real.
The bit with the red eyes. It instantly reminded me of Judge Doom from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Is that uncanny?
Well, I mean, I feel like that was part of the point. But yeah, like
Luis recapping how when he killed your brother, he talked just like this.
Exactly. And then we have the man with the red eyes turning into an actual literal puppet.
I loved that so much because in the book it's implied like he's not the one pulling the strings here, and they just literalize it and have him fall apart. I'm just like, oh, okay. Ava DuVernay, direct a horror movie, please.
She has. It's called When They See Us.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I mean, I get what you mean. You mean like a thriller horror movie, like Nia DaCosta's Candyman.
Yeah. But you're not wrong. Like, that is a whole different kind of horror. That is a real world horror.
Yeah.
But still, like, the fact that Charles Wallace falls under his influence that quickly, I don't know, I kind of missed the suspense from the book a little bit.
Well, the book had, like, Charles Wallace being much more arrogant about his intelligence, so he actively gets himself possessed because he fully believes that he can defeat the It. But then it all falls apart from there, and we don't have that in the movie version.
Yeah, the idea that his pride is his greatest fault doesn't really come up in the movie.
Yeah, and I also think I kind of missed the scene where Charles Wallace and Calvin, they're like rattling off the Gettysburg Address and nursery rhymes and stuff. And then that comes back when Meg tries to do it and it doesn't work. So then eventually she goes to like the science stuff and that works.
But also the Declaration of Independence, if you'll remember, and that led to a really interesting conversation that I really wish had happened with the context of this cast. How alike and equal are not the same thing. Because, you know, she was rattling off like the first lines of the Declaration of Independence, and Charles Wallace, as it, tries to say, but that is what everybody has in Camazotz because we're all the same. And it's just like, no, that's not the same thing.
It's the picture of the people on the boxes by the fence.
Exactly. So again, I like that's like the one thing I really wish they had emphasized. No, this is an anti-fascist piece.
I'm gonna theorize that Disney told them they couldn't do that.
Oh, almost certainly.
Yeah, but also within the medium, I feel like the anti-fascist angle would have worked better in a miniseries because they would have been able to extend that.
And maybe then also included Aunt Beast.
Yes! Oh my god. Aunt Beast, so cuddly. And then we see Meg being so happy and carefree for the first time in a long time.
That I can almost understand why they cut, just because the fact that they just do this whole, like, not even quite a side quest before the big climax.
It's a short rest.
Yeah, true. It's a short rest. But yeah, I can see why they cut that. I do kind of miss Aunt Beast too. I wish they had figured out a way to incorporate her in there, but I get why that was cut.
At least they mentioned her.
But also another scene that they cut was the ant on the string scene, where it really showcased Meg's intelligence when she's explaining theoretical quantum physics. And we see her and Kate connecting on that scientific level, whereas they're in contention with each other because Kate's not really being supportive of Meg. When Meg had pegged Veronica with the basketball, and it seemed like Kate wasn't really very supportive of that. She didn't even demand an apology from Veronica, and made it seem like Meg was completely at fault for it. So it would have brought some levity and a little bit more dimension to their relationship if they had kept that scene in there.
You're not wrong, but I also think maybe they were going from because I feel like in the 60s the whole idea of mother and daughter being at odds just would not have been quite as acceptable, but nowadays of course we see that all the time in media, which on the one hand it is a little overused, but on the other hand it makes perfect sense considering the circumstance. Also we do get to see Meg using her knowledge of physics to kind of save her and Calvin's asses, which that was awesome. I loved that.
It's the classics. Never mind.
No, go ahead.
No, I just can't get my mouth to make the words. Slingshot weaver. There we go.
He is so in awe of her intelligence. Honestly, we love to see it.
I mean, I think the thing is, with the Wrinkle in Time and how tessering works, I think the real problem there is our old frenemy Marvel. Do you remember what else has talked about connecting those things? And what else uses the term tesseract?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's always
It wasn't originally called the tesseract. It was called the cosmic cube.
That is true. I was wondering about that.
But what the movie calls a tesseract, I knew going in as an Einstein-Rosen bridge because I was obsessed with the Thor movies and with Jane Foster. And so basically when I'm reading that scene, all I can think of is when Jane basically replicates that scene in Love and Thunder to explain wormholes.
Yeah.
And they've also done it in like Event Horizon, and there are a bunch of other, I think, movies that have done see these two pieces of paper? I'm gonna bring them together and stick a pencil through them, and that's a wormhole, an Einstein-Rosen bridge, a tesseract.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Now I'm really interested in where the word tesseract came from.
Beth, you've said that and you've activated like 3 Wikipedia searches at once.
Sorry, not sorry.
I love how the tesseract is visualized, though.
Cerveza cristal. Cerveza cristal.
Tesseract, also known as a hypercube, four-dimensional cube. The idea of a square to a four-dimensional space is the same way as a cube in the extension of an idea in a square for a three-dimensional tube. So this is basically math and science.
Okay.
Well, there you go.
Math, my old nemesis. I was not a good math child, which is probably another reason why A Wrinkle in Time did not appeal to me when I was a small one. I was reading all the fairy tales and not looking at the science fiction.
Oh, same here.
That's very fair. I definitely gravitated more towards that sort of thing, but I really did enjoy this book. And I was actually pretty decent at math as a kid, but multiplication tables were the one that really was a big sticker to me until I started watching Cyber Chase. So the fact that multiplication tables are evil in this book in this story is kind of amazing.
In the same scene where we are reminded of sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere, including your mouth, Calvin.
And the fact that they were eating sandwiches during the scene. Double pun.
Yay!
I love the visual effects in this movie. We've already kind of talked about Mrs. Whatsit, but I love the scene where Meg looks at the enfolded, invisible space and, like, dances her way up to her dad. And I love the visualization of tessering, both when it's, like, something Meg is resisting and when she accepts it at the end. Oh my god, when she accepts it at the end and it's an explosion of color and light, it's amazing.
So good. God, this is just a pretty movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, if they made it today, it would be, like, all, done in the volume, and it would not look nearly as good.
No.
Because Disney is using the volume way too much and limiting what you can do with it, and I'm not against the volume. I just think that it's been run into the ground as a technology without the room for new innovation.
That's also speaking of tasting like sand. The whole scene on Casmasaws where Charles Wallace is literally being hurt by the sound of the balls being bounced, it reads as an overstimulation episode.
Autistic mood.
Yes.
All the heroes in this in this story are neurodivergent.
Also, we do know Meg is going through depression. We have a whole set of all the symptoms, like isolation, bursts of anger, all of that.
Mind you, it doesn't help that the principal's being grossly unhelpful.
Ugh. The moment he said aggressive, I just flinched because that is something that's literally weaponized against little black kids.
Mm-hmm.
And he should know that because he is also black.
Exactly, you would think he'd know better, but
it just reminded me of every useless adult in like bullying situations because they often go against the victims and they never question like the perpetrators. Like I don't think. Because remember, he only called Meg. He never called Veronica in as well.
We know that Veronica's parents apparently fear for her life.
Also, he effectively said, "This is why nobody likes you." Like,
you do not say that to a 14-year-old.
How is that acceptable? It's not.
I mean, I was not in high school when this movie came out, but I absolutely remember that at that time in public high schools in America, it was generally just ignore a bully. Words can't hurt you. Don't give them the encouragement. They're doing it to get a reaction out of you.
I hate to say it, but it was definitely...
Meg is the one at fault because she engaged with the bully.
It was very prominent when we were in high school too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's not like Veronica is ever punished for leaving that note in Meg's locker saying, and on the day when on the anniversary when her father disappeared, saying that she disappeared too. That is just no.
Everybody is being dicks about it. Like those two teachers are gossiping about it.
And
for anybody to hear.
Yep, and good for Charles Wallace pointing out that they should be ashamed of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I'm a little disappointed Charles Wallace didn't throw hands.
No, he's too small for that yet, but I don't know. If he had a sister backing him up, then he probably would. But
he's too civilized for that.
But it sort of like drives home that the Murrays are outsiders here, and having them be like a mixed family further reinforces that, because even today there is so much vitriol, even in commercials that portray mixed families, especially with a white father and a black mother.
Yeah.
I also thought it was interesting the choice to have Charles Wallace be adopted.
To be honest, I thought that he was going to end up being like some kind of test tube baby at first.
I think what probably happened is that this was an instance where they were auditioning kids, and Derek gave the best performance, so they're like, all right, we'll write this in because we can't quite go Cinderella 1997 casting.
That's exactly what this reminded me of.
Shammy, did you want to talk about the happy medium? Because I certainly do.
Yeah, the happy medium was originally portrayed as female in the book, but, well, I'm assuming that they're non-binary here, but you have Zach Galifianakis playing them. You have a white actor. Like, I feel like absolutely.
At least they didn't give him the turban.
They could have chosen a femme presenting or a non-binary actor for them. Like, Harnum Carr was my original image for happy medium, because we have this fabulous femme presenting person with a full magnificent beard.
If you want to make a fan cast of Happy Medium and put it up on the blog, I will not stop you, Shani.
I already did that.
Of course. Brains work fast, Shammy works faster.
Hell yes. But yeah, no, like, at least they didn't give him a turban. I would have screamed if they had given him a turban.
No, oh no.
I don't really see mediums as being associated with South Asian culture.
I'm not saying that it would have been, but that is what she's described in the book, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
like she has
if you're putting a white person in a turban, that's appropriation.
Fair enough. Again, I only read the book this weekend, so there was a lot I did not internalize.
That's very fair.
Yeah.
One thing I really missed with the happy medium is because throughout her whole scene, she's just like, "Oh, do we have to look at the sad stuff? I so much prefer looking at the happy stuff." And I'm just like, "Sister, that is not only a mood; it is even more of a mood now with social media than it was in the '60s." Because sure, like obviously they had the news back then, but you could much more easily get away from that now that a whole bunch of where we kind of go to decompress also has all of the worst news in the world going on.
Oh, are you bummed about the Cold War? Is that the biggest problem you have right now?
Maybe it was a mistake to have all of us people who don't feel like we have power to have access to every atrocity going on in the world.
It does talk to people.
Honestly, I'm surprised phones weren't made into a bigger part of this.
Yeah, true.
I feel like, we almost accidentally hit the nail on the head when we're talking about how hard the world has gotten. The only thing in the universe that travels faster than light is the darkness. It's it. So we just have to fight harder to bring the light back.
Yeah, we're called on to be the very warriors that Mrs. Who, Mrs. Watson, and Mrs. Witch want us to be.
They tried to have a Get Out the Vote initiative attached to this film like they did for Black Panther. For Black Panther, it was Wakanda the vote. For this one, it was Warrior the vote. Unfortunately, did not get as much traction. But honestly, if this movie had been saved for a summer blockbuster, I think it would have gotten more attention.
Yes.
Yeah.
March is kind of one of those months for a dumping ground, unless you're Everything Everywhere all at once and you can push through on momentum.
I mean, like, I do appreciate that all the dumping ground months have started kind of seeing more and more exceptions to that rule.
Yeah.
Like, even the Scream franchise has been thriving in the very months that we're mentioning, like January and March. Fuck you, Spyglass, but...
But this movie had everything working against it in terms of not only advertisement, but how it was being promoted. Because, Black Panther completely overshadowed it.
Which is a shame. It shouldn't have gone to that point.
Yeah.
There's room for both.
God, how cool would it have been to have, a promotional event of Chadwick and Storm together? That would have been so cool.
Oh, it could have been.
God, I miss Chadwick.
R.I.P. Chadwick.
We all do.
Yeah, it's just a shame that this movie didn't do better, because This is very good. This should have been the start of, because again, this is part of a quintet with the books. Like they could have done so much with it. I would have finally had a reason to finally read the rest of the books.
This should have been the beginning of the Ava DuVernay-sance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although I was fully joking about this earlier, but since we didn't get the twins in the first book, like I joked that the night Alex came home, the twins were conceived that night.
I mean, you know,
well, it's been long enough that you could argue there's a time skip.
Yes. Also, that line Alex says about Kate's calculations giving them the universe. It's not quite up there with Londian taxes, but it's very close.
The flashback scene where he figures out how to test her because he's looking at Kate holding Charles Wallace singing Flower of the Universe, Child of Mine. He's like, love is the frequency. And it's so corny, but you're like, because that's the power of Chris Pine and Ava DuVernay.
Yes.
Damn right.
Also, I kind of love how many parallels there were between Kate and Alex and Calvin and Meg. Like even you still have that scene with Charles Wallace looking at his parents and then looking at Calvin and Meg, and this is going, this is what shipping is. This is like them discovering what shipping is.
Baby,
I have to go onto my teeny tiny Tumblr and write about this.
Yeah.
No, keep Charles Wallace off of Tumblr, please.
No, he's too small.
He's too good for this world, too pure.
Must be this old to Tumblr.
But speaking of love, like having that scene of Meg just screaming that she deserves to be loved, like, and she doesn't have to work to be deserved. She can be just who she is. Because everything that's led up to the making of her, she deserves to exist. She deserves to have that love because even though, like, her father has disappeared, she still has his love.
And it's a callback to what Mrs. Witch said about, do you know how many choices and events had to happen to make you exactly as you are?
That scene made me cry. It was exactly what I needed to hear in the moment that I saw the movie, and I will never forget that.
It's going in my mental weaponry against the brain demons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now I'm starting to think maybe Daniels were a fan of this movie, because,
you know,
it also feels like what Waymond tells Evelyn about, you are so special because every choice led you here.
Yes.
And in that case, it's like, yeah, you're unremarkable because every choice in every other universe unlocked a remarkable life for you, but still, every choice made you here, and that made you exactly the person you need to be to save the universe.
And that's another one where love and kindness are what are going to save the day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god, can you imagine a crossover between the two?
I would give money if I had any.
But yeah, it's almost like the world needs messages like this or something right now.
What a novel concept.
And like people try to pass it off as if it's corny or cheesy, but it's just like,
that's another thing I know. This movie, for all that Jennifer Lee is writing it, it is severely lacking in both a dorkability, unless you count the softness around the romances, and it's lacking in quips.
It's very sincere.
I miss sincerity. Everything either now has to be like super deep or super snarky, and there is no in between.
I have to say that I really felt they got interpersonal relationships very well, especially Meg and Charles Wallace.
Best siblings.
Siblings.
That is not at all how siblings interact in the real world in my experience, but it was...
It's exactly how me and my brother interact, though.
Yeah, but you and your brother are adults now, right?
Yeah.
Like when I was Meg's age and my brothers were Charles Wallace's age and younger, we hated each other. We made each other miserable.
See, John and I didn't start really butting heads until he was about Meg's age. Which I guess tracks.
It varies for everyone. It also depends on whether or not you're the weird one in the family, which it was me.
Oh, I was too, but me. Yeah, it was very much me.
Yeah, even though I was an only child, that was also me.
Yeah, you're the only child here, okay.
I just really love when they had just met Calvin on the street, and Charles Wallace is going into Mrs. Who's house, and Meg is like, whatever this is, I don't like it. And Charles Wallace just says, you'll manage. Peak sibling.
No, peak sibling, peak sassy little kid.
Peak older sister who has been forced into a role of parenting.
That too.
See, I volunteered for it because I was 6 and stupid.
Pressure like a drip, 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 that'll never stop. Miranda, American.
Perfect.
Final thoughts?
This movie deserves so much more than its reputation and what the critics had always said for it. It is a genuinely good movie.
My fellow millennials, if you have children and are sad that you cannot show them the Potter films anymore, might I suggest this as an alternative?
Reject the wizard boy. Embrace the science girl.
She blinded me with science. It's something that it's something that both applies to Kay and Alex and Calvin and Meg.
If I may say, Alex has definitely sung that to Kate.
Yes!
To make her laugh.
Absolutely.
Because Chris Pine
that was how he proposed.
Ooh, yes. Someone write
a fan fiction and send it to me, please.
Remind me to send you about the university prequel days fic.
Yay!
Well then, my counsel, I believe the time has come to ask, is the Force with it?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Always. I'm not even going to say we're all Sith in the dark side dealing in absolutes. This is the work of the light side. The Force is with it.
Hell yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good.
Luminous beings we are. Who has something they want to plug?
I have the Sibling Podcast, an each retelling, the podcast where we explore all the ways old tales are made new. And you can also find me on Twitter, Tumblr, and TikTok at Faye Riviera, where you can send me all of your good Alex and Kate fanfictions.
I've changed my Tumblr name. You can now find me on the Online Muse on Tumblr. And My GoFundMe is still up, so any donations are greatly appreciated.
I got nothing.
Please also remember that in addition to the Tumblr blogs, the IER6D blog that tracks the connections between both of our podcasts is now up and running. So please visit and feed Ire some data chips. The droid is hungry.
Yes, tell them hi. They're the sweetest. They are the best droid.
We love our little circuit baby.
Our little purple baby.
As for me, I will ask that you keep the spirit of Star Wars alive by supporting artists through the Entertainment Community Fund, and by taking action to support anti-imperial and anti-colonial movements across the globe, partially by using links provided below, and by taking action in your community. And you can find me on the wider internet as La Femme Fictionale, including on YouTube, Twitter, and Tumblr, where you can also find the blog for this show. Our theme music is provided by Refractory Period, the two girls' one-beat synth-pop sensation. You can follow them on Instagram at Refractory Period the band. To further support this podcast, please subscribe to us on your platform of choice, leave reviews, consider joining Patreon, and share with your friends to boost our visibility. And now it's time to turn to the Chance Cube to decide where our journey takes us next.
That's a 5.
That is definitely a 5.
That is a 5, which means next up is Polite Society by Nita Manzoor.
Yay!
We will see you all next time. Until then, stay safe, stay strong, stay beautiful, and may the Force be with you.